All right, final session, and we're all here. Starting on the far end, I'll just kind of introduce everybody here. We have Damon Anderson, Jason Hart, Kevin Latz, Eric Murray, Sandy Newman-Schmeidel, Speidel Newman, excuse me, I apologize. And I'm already, Perelker, and finally Noah Taylor. Give him a big hand. Excellent. And this is our longest session, so we'll just cut right to the chase. And I'll start at the far end there with Damon. You've got about 3 minutes for opening remarks, and we'll just kind of share the mic and go down the line.
Hello, we're sharing the mic. I love that. My name is Damon Anderson. I'm originally from Kansas City, Kansas. I'm a lifelong Kansan. I love Kansas with all my heart. And I have followed politics and been engaged to the extent where I would donate and vote my entire life. When Trump came into office, there was something in me that was triggered when almost immediately coming into office, he fired the 17 inspector generals. It just cut to me that there was such hypocrisy that we hear how Trump's going to come in and be this businessman and clean up government, drain the swamp, and almost the very first thing he does is so blatantly swampy, it made me sick. Roger Marshall became the focus of my ire, and the more I thought about it, the more I started getting fired up and thought, if we let this guy get elected again, shame on all of us. And my fear was we're going to put up another candidate, and Barbara Bollier was a candidate I supported immensely on the last election. I thought she had it. I thought she was the best candidate by a factor of at least 2, and she lost. So over the past year, I've spent time driving across Kansas, Johnson County, Wyandotte County, but also coming out here to Thomas County. Connie Davis was one of the first people I met, and I just wanted to hear what's going on. There is this caricature of Western Kansas that has to be inaccurate, and I need to understand what is it that's creating this divide. And that really, to me, is the heart of the problem, is there is a divide. Republicans will not vote for Democrats. And so I just started asking. I didn't ask their party affiliation, whether they were even registered. I just asked, what's your feelings on politics? And what I settled on is that almost exclusively the one thing you could hear across party lines is they're all corrupt. The system is messed up, they're in it for the money, some variation of something that said nothing can change. And it started to hit me, and this isn't some great epiphany, but I think that in a way we have to sympathize. Is that the 30-second one, by the way? That's the now. 1 minute, okay. I apologize, I didn't hear the initial. But I think that for a Democrat to win in this election, they are going to have to find something that extends beyond the standard Democratic talking points. I firmly believe in almost everything that you're going to hear on this panel today that you heard in the 1st District. The problem is I also believe that those messages are not going to translate into votes from the Republican side of things. I have heard from too many Republicans that tell me I've never voted for a D in my life. And despite the fact that in a lot of instances we think they're voting against their own best interests, they're voting for how they feel, and that's just something we have to change. So my entire campaign is focused on the one factor I think trumps everything else. I don't think we can fix any one issue in this system until we fix the system itself. And I would ask all of you to take a look at my site and you'll see what I mean. Anyway, I'll pass this on. Thank you.
Very good. Jason.
Thank you. So my name is Jason Hart. I'm one of the candidates that's running for United States Senate to remove Roger Marshall. So you guys know a little bit about me. I'm a lifelong Kansan. My mom grew up in Scott City, just south of here. I remember going out to Camp Christie for church camp growing up in Dodge City. I have been a public servant for Kansans for more than 2 decades. It's been more than 21 years. During that period of time, I've been prosecuting child sex offenders, child sexual exploitation, which is child pornography, and sex traffickers. For the last 16 years of that 21 years, I've been doing that at the U.S. Attorney's Office with the Department of Justice out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Wichita, Kansas. When I tell folks what I do, or what I used to do, because I quit on March 4th, most folks don't really understand what being a U.S. attorney means. It means I took an oath to protect the Constitution. It means I'm serving Kansans all across the state. When I'm working in Wichita, Kansas, I'm reaching out to all these communities across the state, and I'm pulling sex offenders out of your communities. That means I'm reaching into Baxter Springs and Cherryvale, down in the southeast part of the state. I'm reaching out up here, pulling folks out of St. Francis and Dighton, pulling folks out of Ellis. And when I say folks, I mean folks that are abusing kids. And I've been doing that. I did it for 16 years. I came in under the Obama administration to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Before that, I had been working at the Kansas Attorney General's office. There, I was traveling around the state doing the exact same thing. That was when it was our last Democratic Attorney General, Steve Six. To explain to you how I got to this place of doing this very difficult work, it started when I was 5 years old. My family, my dad worked for TGNY, if y'all remember that. Well, I was born in Russell. We moved around from Russell to McPherson to Beloit, then to Wellington, then to Dodge City, where I really grew up. But in Wellington, when I was 5, my folks decided to open our home to foster children. And having kids show up in our home that were beaten and bruised and burned in some instances with broken hearts, it changed me. And I came from a position of privilege, and I remember my mom and my dad telling me, you need to help these kids feel safe. And that stuck with me. I went to law school, I went to KU on scholarship. I then went to KU Law School on scholarship. I'm not going to say I'm the brightest tool in the shed, but I'm not a slouch. So I took a job after law school. I went out to Dodge City, practiced out there a little bit, and then took a job in Shawnee County where I was prosecuting domestic violence crimes and family law crimes. And then I got picked up and moved to the AG's office and then the U.S. Attorney's office. Now, the reason why I'm running, I didn't have this on my bingo card to come run against Roger Marshall. But the way that they have done stuff has made it clear I couldn't stay where I was, and I needed to be in this race to go prosecute for accountability. I'll talk more about this in closing because I got.
Yep. Thank you, Jason. Yep, right to Kevin.
Okay, thank you all for hanging in there. I know it's been a long day. My name is Kevin Latz. I live in Johnson County, Kansas with my wife and my 3 kids. We also have 3 dogs, a chameleon, turtle, bird. I'm a husband to my surgeon wife, and I'm a father to 2 boys and a daughter. I'm a man of faith. I'm a surgeon, in that order. I'm new to this, and my voice will betray that on occasion during this talk, I'm sure. I've been considering running for quite some time. Last March, I was in Leavenworth, Kansas, and a lady sitting right over there, was not here, but Amy Bateman was right there, and she pointed to me and said, "Why you? What's special?" And I didn't have an answer. And while I'm a pretty good surgeon, kind of like Jason said, he's probably a pretty dang good lawyer. I'm a pretty good surgeon. I'm a great advocate for children and families. And while we say we love our children, our healthcare policies, our fiscal policies, our environmental policies would suggest otherwise. My focus will be to advocate for kids and families in Kansas and everywhere. So while I'm glad to answer questions about these pertinent issues we're going to talk about, I've learned the hard way that the best way to help families and kids is to close the door and sit down and ask who's in front of me, what are you worried about? And how can I help you? And then listen.
Very good. Thank you. And we're going to move on from Kevin to Eric.
Yes, good afternoon, friends, community members, Kansans, all of you loved ones. It's so great to be here in Oberlin with you. I want to pause and start by thanking all the folks who put this great event on. I know Miss Lori and Robin and all of the amazing volunteers here who've been working for months to do this. So let's give yourselves a round of applause. And another really cool thing is happening here, the regional collaboration, right? As we talk about having to go all over the state, we've got 105 counties, and we're all focused on winning. But to see Decatur, Norton, Smith, and Thomas all come together and do this is powerful. So kudos to you guys for doing that. So I wanted to start there. My name is Eric Murray. I am born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas. So I come from Wyandotte County on the eastern side of the state. I'm a fourth generation Kansan who's raising the fifth generation in Wyandotte County. My kids go to the same high school that I graduated from in 2000, that my mom graduated from in 1967. It is the #1 public high school in this state. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that investment in public education that all of you made in me, in making sure that Kansas fully funds our educational requirements. You invested in me, and so as I sit here before you today, I thank all of you. Even if you don't donate $1 to my campaign, you're already invested in this campaign by your work in making sure that kids like me have that opportunity. So first off, thank you. My wife, Nicole, is a nurse. And so as a nurse in healthcare, I see what is happening to our healthcare systems. And so we've got to make sure that we invest in healthcare as well. I thank my wife for being here. So when I start with that, people say, well, how did a kid from Wyandotte County have the audacity to come to Western Kansas and sit on this stage? Well, guess what, loved ones? I've been doing things that people said was impossible my whole life. Beating Roger Marshall this year is not going to be hard compared to getting a beautiful woman from Long Beach, California to put up with a kid from Kansas who 26 years ago said to her, yo baby, what's up? And she said, where are you from? Who still says, yo baby, what's up? It's 2000. And I said, sorry, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Will you come to Kansas with me and start a family? And she said yes, and 26 years ago we did that. My oldest daughter is my campaign manager. Why do I share that with you? We have got to invest in our youth. We've got to invest in our future. So public education, healthcare, economic opportunity, these are all our values, and these are the values of Kansans, urban and rural, east and west. I would submit to you, as you heard from Colin, also largely Republican and Democrat. We've got to find ways out of these partisan circles, out of all of this division that the world keeps wanting to place on us, unite in community, in regionalism, in our values and in love, and invest in the things that we believe in. As your next U.S. Senator, that's what you're sending me to Washington to do. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Eric. Sandy.
Hey y'all, I'm Sandy Spidell Newman. I was born in Topeka, grew up in Overland Park. Like Eric, I went to the same high school my dad went to. I went to Shawnee Mission North. He went there when it was Shawnee Mission Rural, the only high school in Kansas City. Mom grew up in Strawberry Hill. She was first generation American. Her father emigrated from Croatia. So I come from some strong stock. I did just about everything in high school. I played every sport. I did student government, ran the student government officers, if you will, did Girls Nation, represented Kansas for the first time at Girls State, and then represented Kansas for the first time at Girls Nation. Those types of things matter because it grounds you in who you are. I was good enough at math. I kind of like math. Got a scholarship to study economics at the University of Chicago, then got my MBA at Northwestern while I worked full-time, so my company paid for it. When people say they're fiscally conservative or fiscally responsible, I was talking to Lon Fromm last night. He asked me what that meant to me. I said, one, I grew up with a dad who worked for the gas utility, never made more than $30,000 a year. I know the value of $1. We were not poor. We made do. We did what everybody did. Dad roofed houses in the summer so we could go on vacation. I used to run up and down the ladder carrying a couple shingles to keep him going until lunch, where he could carry up another bundle. But that kind of grit in terms of what you're doing starts showing you that. Then as an adult, in corporate, I spent the last 40 years in business, the last 22 at a Fortune 250. You don't get investments in your program handed to you. You earn them. You have to compete against other people with competing priorities to make sure that you are delivering. My numbers got reported to Wall Street quarterly. You miss a number, that's no bueno. You have to continually work, retool, adjust, and keep fighting to deliver. So why does all this matter? I was at the top of my game. They were going to give me more stuff, and to AI, which would really, really intrigue me. I love technology, seeing the possible, still do. But I found I need to do something more important. Democracy is at stake. We see what's going on. We really have to take the tools that we've developed over, some of us over the last 40 years, like myself, and take them and use them for the greater good. We have to work across channels. In business, I never said, who did you vote for? No, we have an issue. We have a problem that we need to solve. How do you look at it? What can you bring to the table? How can we work together if nobody cares who gets the credit and solve this and deliver value for the firm or for the people that you're working for? I'm ready to fight for Kansas. I've been speaking truth to power my entire career. I know how to fight and I know how to get it done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. By the way, is that a Roger Marshall bobblehead? Does he have a comment? Oh, he just nods his head. Oh.
I'm surprised he's here.
He's been awfully quiet. All right, Ann, whenever you're ready.
Can confirm he does not speak. How many people went to the ugly town hall? I was with you. I remember. And I told him I was going to take his job. I don't talk a lot about myself because, well, I'm just not, I'm probably not that interesting. All my policies are here in the People's Deal. Please pick one up. My printer went haywire and printed a lot, so we got extra, so good for us. But we're also online, you can find it all out. Everything we want to do is to restore power to the people. We want to take our government back. We want to restore the promise of America and make life livable for Kansans again. But I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. I grew up in a conservative family in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. My dad was a white-collar CEO of a small grocery store chain in southeast Arkansas. My mother left around the time I was 2, and I didn't live with her. I stayed with my dad and was raised by my grandma. My mother's side of the family was actually very blue-collar, and after my mother had her other daughter, I would go visit them every other weekend, and they lived out in the country. And so I have lived both in a conservative world and in a country world, and in a town that's now majority African American, and the suburb of that town that is mainly Caucasian. And then I moved up here to marry my husband, who's from Mumbai, India. He's a naturalized citizen because he wanted to do cancer research at KU. So I've also lived with an Indian family, and in fact, my mother and father-in-law live in our basement right now. We have a studio apartment for them. Don't worry, it's not like a dungeon. It sounds creepy, but it's not. We gotta be able, what Damon said is exactly what I believe. We've gotta be able to reach across. I talk to people who are even Trump supporters. We gotta have grace for people. We gotta let them back in, and we gotta figure out what the whole truth is, and then we have to act accordingly. I don't care if I'm right or wrong anymore. I don't care who's more to blame about how we got here. They have us fighting and punching sideways instead of punching up where we need to be punching. I heard on the radio one day this fellow who I disagreed with everything he said, but he said this, he said, we don't have a bi-party system, we have a uniparty system. And you're exactly right, people are fed up with the big money and the political football game that they're playing. We want somebody who's gonna go tell us the truth and do what's in our best interest, not be paid by big money, corporate interests, mega PACs, all of those things. So that's what I wanna do, I wanna go after those mega corporations, and I want to give power back to the people again. I have 2 children, 8 and 10, and I'll be honest with you, I'm scared when my husband leaves the house. I'm an immigration lawyer, I know law. USCIS is working with the government, so I can do it. I passed 3 bar exams, I can learn whatever I need to learn, but we're in a constitutional crisis and we need somebody that cares about our country. I'm also happen to be a daughter of the American Revolution, and I believe in this country, and I know that if we come together, we can get it back. So let's do it. Was that a hook? I'm so sorry. No, yeah.
No, thank you, Ann. All right, last but not least, Noah.
I'm Noah Taylor. I'm a combat veteran. I'm a small business operator, and I also started a grassroots program in Wichita, Kansas, focused on accountability and transparency and making sure our government leaders actually do what they're supposed to do. I grew up El Dorado, Kansas, out on the outskirts of town. My dad's a local union pipefitter 441. One day I'll get him to retire, I promise. My mom is a nurse, so I grew up with the values of hard work, legacy, and compassion ingrained into me, and I took those values with me into high school. And I knew I wanted to serve this country from a really young age. I didn't know how, so I did the worst decision possible, and I just went to college aimlessly, and frankly, outside of meeting my wife, it didn't help. So I joined the Army, because I knew they could help me find my path. And I became an infantryman, because I believe if you're ever in a position to send somebody to war, you should know what that feels like. And so I deployed with 2-3 infantry. We were attached to special forces. We'd go into Taliban-controlled area, we'd push them back so that big army could come in and do their job. So when I talk about the devastation that war brings, I know what that looks like. From the friends I lost overseas, to the families that were devastated, to the ones we left behind. And so after active duty, I got out of that and I became a counterintelligence analyst. So I could use my top secret security clearance and my combat knowledge to shape the strategy that our soldiers use on the battlefield to save lives. And now I'm raising my 2 kids with my wife in a little tiny town called Keachai, Kansas. Bought the house she grew up in. I'm trying to fix it up. I'm not the best, but I'm doing what I can. But you know, we're scared. The whole community's scared. Between the rising cost of gas, groceries, property taxes, and these tariffs, it feels like what makes life good gets further out of reach each year. And if we're honest with ourselves, if we're truly honest, it's been that way for a bit. Between the 24-hour news cycle and social media pitting us against each other, we're too busy bickering amongst ourselves while people like Roger run out the back door and get rich. You know, running for office wasn't something I planned on doing at this stage in my life, but I can't sit quietly. I mean, Roger Marshall's unaccountable to his voters. The day he ran out of that town hall should have been the day he lost his office. You know, he's screwing over farmers out west, aerospace workers back in Wichita, and he's voting for legislation that decreases our healthcare access and increases our costs while taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from big pharma. He refuses to go after the corporations that are price gouging us at the grocery store, and he's going to make Kansas families pay the price while he sells his vote to the highest bidder. And you know, quite frankly, I can't take it laying down anymore. That's why I want to run for U.S. Senate, because I'm just a Kansan feeling the squeeze too. And being in the military taught me that when things get tough, you can't run out the back door. You got to dig in. You got to stand tall, and you got to fight. And when I say you got to fight, I know what a fight means. And so I want to fight for common sense things like lowering the cost of living, ending these forever wars, and fighting corruption. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're gonna go back the other direction all the way to Damon, and we got a few questions, and then we'll switch it up and do some audience questions too. Question for Damon, we'll go down the line. How will you advocate for Kansas farmers in upcoming Farm Bill negotiations, particularly on issues like crop insurance and market stability?
It's interesting because my entire campaign is focused on the effects of money in politics, and I call it legal corruption. I believe that legal corruption is what has brought us here today. So when asked a question like this, I'm not going to pretend to say I understand everything that farmers need, but there are some basics that I think we should all be able to agree on. Is that, from my understanding and the people I have spoken to, it seems like they all say that special interests hold the keys to how the Farm Bill passes, what the contents of the Farm Bill are, and how it basically helps them determine exactly what they're going to plant next year. So what I would say and how I can help individual Kansas farmers is, I don't plan on running more than one term, but I can guarantee and tell you I won't be spending my money fundraising. 40% of a candidate's time and an elected politician's time is spent fundraising. 40% of all politicians go directly into lobbying the minute they retire or get booted out of office. They have an agenda. My agenda is coming back to Kansas, and I will not pretend to know everything that farmers need, but I can tell you I will be back here and I will be held accountable, and I will do my best, because what I'm trying to do is bring us together and help the policy in all ways, not just the farm policy. But in this crowd, I can tell you, you won't find somebody who's a stronger advocate for you who will come back and stand in front of you and see if my policies fit your needs.
Very good. Same question for Jason. How will you advocate for Kansas farmers in upcoming Farm Bill negotiations?
I think first off, you got to understand that we're not an island. Each one of us has a representative or senator. We got to work together and present a united Kansas front, because that's who we're representing as Kansans. We're not representing the party. So that's one of the very first things, is going and talking with the other House reps. You also got to have a strong enough personality to get Jerry Moran in line, because that's important. And I think you're already seeing Jerry Moran kind of waver and try to put a little distance between him and Roger Marshall. I think for crop insurance, we need to incentivize or provide more benefit for conservation efforts, like improving irrigation technology. You know, if you think of like your car insurance, if you drive a car with better safety features, your costs go down. And that's not what's happening for our farmers. We also need to have market stability, so which requires Congress to push back on these incoherent wars and conflicts with both our enemies and allies alike. Because while I'm not a farmer, I grew up in a farm community, I know that you can't do much about the weather, and it's going to be difficult to make a plan. But what you absolutely don't want to deal with is man-made conflicts and man-made chaos, and that's what we've been dealing with under this administration. I think in terms of market stability, it's also really critically important that we break up these vertically integrated markets, and I just got cut off, so I'm gonna stop.
And Kevin, same question. How will you advocate for Kansas farmers in upcoming Farm Bill negotiations?
I'm clearly not an expert in this area, but it makes no sense to come out here, and it's disrespectful not to have done some research and thought. And so, first, it's kind of a full circle. Farm Bill is kind of a full circle moment. When I was a junior in college, I went and spent a semester in DC and worked at the Agriculture Committee on the 1985 Farm Bill. The fact that it's 2026, and these are supposed to be on 5-year increments, and we haven't passed it, we just passed it out of the Ag Committee, just as a reflection of the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. Certainly crop insurance needs to address the current realities. It needs to cover drought coverage as well as the usual guarding against losses in the field, and also market loss in commodity prices as well. The other thing I think it's super important, the Big Beautiful Bill took away SNAP benefits, and there's 17,000 families in the first district that lost SNAP opportunities or coverage when that Big Beautiful Bill went into effect. So any new farm bill needs to absolutely restore those SNAP rollbacks.
Good. Same question for Eric.
Sure. First off, I want to start with this. Before people care what you know, they want to care why you care. They want to know why you care, okay? We have to start with Kansas is the heart of America, and the A in heart is agriculture. The food that we grow here, right, not only feeds families here in Kansas, it feeds this state, it feeds this country, and it feeds the world. And the reality is we cannot continue to not lean into the needs of our farmers and our rural communities and what that means for our global economy. So what do, right? Understanding the why, we've got to do 4 things. The first one is strengthen crop insurance. The second, we've got to update our commodity prices, our reference prices, right? We understand that costs are going up everywhere, but no one has looked at how that's impacting the cost of inputs for farmers in this country. We've got to support our right to repair, right? In a free country, we bought this equipment. Why can't we fix and repair our own equipment? And the last thing we need is to be forced to drive to a dealer 2 hours away when our equipment is held hostage in the field. Enough said there. And lastly, we've got to expand our export markets. Again, the cuts to USAID and all of these other things that have been mislabeled as fraud. No, that was food that fed children not only all over the world, but fed farmers here in Kansas and communities here in Kansas. And so I think doing those 4 things to make sure that we invest in our communities and in our agriculture community, that's why we're the heart of America, folks. Let's live up to those values, and let's make sure that our politicians in Washington invest in us. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, how will you advocate for Kansas farmers?
Well, I think the key point here is advocate, right? We all have similar policies. We are all Democrats, right? So how are we actually going to get those policies enacted? And I think one of the things that we want to do, or at least one of the things I think is necessary, again, hearkening back to business, what you would do is establish an advisory board. So my 5 key strategic priorities include one of pillars, of course, is agriculture. So the Ag Advisory Board, you tap into them to know how to lever, how to talk to, what's going to be the key points to advocate to get the Farm Bill passed again. The Farm Bill's up for vote right now. It's an extension of existing policy to the points of many of my colleagues here. It's around stability. Of course, you have to have stability in markets or the prices are too erratic. That impacts input costs as well as selling the grain and selling other outputs across the world. You obviously need crop insurance, we understand that. We need investment in our agricultural research. That was all canned by the big beautiful bill. We need to lower those input costs and restore access to the global markets, which some of the tariffs have cut off at the knees. We also need to restore SNAP, of course. We need to feed the people locally so they have nutrition assistance, but also USAID, which enables us to have global markets and feed the world.
Thank you. And same question.
Okay, so I don't have to tell y'all that farmers are getting squeezed from both sides, right? Input costs are controlled by a handful of corporations, and on the other side, the processors and the buyers have way too much power. The farmers have to pay what they tell them to pay, and then they have to accept what they tell them to accept. That's not a free market, that's consolidation. We need more than short-term solutions for our farmers, we also need long-term solutions. So in the Farm Bill and beyond, I'll focus on 4 things. We gotta protect and strengthen our crop insurance, of course, it's the backbone of farm stability, especially with drought and volatile markets. But it's gotta work for farmers and not just the largest operations. We gotta restore market stability, as my colleagues have said. We gotta stop the pointless trade wars. And the next one is one of my big ones, and you'll hear me talk about it a lot. We gotta enforce our antitrust laws. We have to increase transparency in pricing. And lawyers, sorry, I studied and wrote it all down. And our government, but that's a whole nother thing, the transparency in the government. And we gotta make sure that farmers get a fair price for what they produce. No more games from the meat packers or the input monopolies. Let's give our farmers more options. We need to invest in local processing, regional markets, and independent supply chains so farmers aren't trapped selling to 1 or 2 buyers. And let's expand access to low interest credit and disaster support so one bad year doesn't mean losing the farm. If you choose me to serve you, I will fight for our farmers because that is what I do as a lawyer, I advocate. Because if family farms disappear, rural Kansas disappears with it. And I don't think any of us want that.
Thank you, Ann. Noah.
All right, Kansas agriculture is the biggest economic driver. $60 billion, over 140,000 jobs. But right now, the federal government's inability to do their job has left us uncertain. Not just from our farmers, but our communities as well. Add on to that the tariffs that are squeezing them and raising input costs, and now they're on war, which is making those input costs even more for fuel and fertilizer. I just talked to a farmer the other day who didn't pre-buy his diesel, and he's gonna be paying thousands extra for that. We got fertilizer up 20 to 50%. We have farm bankruptcies up 46%. Farm bills have historically been a bipartisan and collaborative effort. I'm thinking of people like Senator Pat Roberts, Senator Bob Dole. We don't have that leadership right now. On crop insurance, it's a critical safety net to our farmers, especially in the uncertain times that we have today. It should be supported. Too many small farms are getting left out when it's because of cost, access, red tape, and other barriers. We need to make it easier to access these for newer farms and small farmers. And the SNAP cuts last year in the big, beautiful bill is a sticking point for me. Because at a time when the cost of living is skyrocketing, cutting access to food for hungry families is unconscionable. In the Senate, unlike Roger Marshall, I'll fight for our families, our communities, and our farmers.
Thank you very much, Noah. All right, we'll go back to Damon one last time, and we'll kind of switch it up a little bit. Next question. What federal actions would you support to stabilize or reopen rural hospitals in Kansas?
There's going to be a common theme every time somebody asks me a question, and that is, money is controlling everything. I sincerely believe it. If you want to know why we pay the highest drug prices in the world despite developing 90% of the drugs on the planet and subsidize a good portion of its research through the National Institutes of Health, it's because the pharmacy industry spends $500 million a year lobbying. the hospital and insurance industry spends hundreds of $millions a year. If you want to know why these problems aren't getting solved, and by the way, I can Google search as anybody can the problems with rural hospitals. The question is, why aren't we solving it? And I will always tell you, until we fix the problem with money, we cannot come up with meaningful solutions. And I'll end it on this. I did a simple research. How much would it take, for instance, the hospital in Great Bend, how much was it losing on average a year before it closed and turned into an urgent care and surgery center? And it was losing on average $4 million a year. I cannot believe Roger Marshall would not have noticed, or at least brought up the fact that President Trump spent $100 million playing golf. Imagine if we had just taken a portion of that and helped open up that hospital. That's what an advocate for Kansas and a true Kansan would have done.
Thank you. Jason, same question. What would you do to support, stabilize, reopen rural hospitals?
Well, that right there was a hole in one. So, here's the things that I would do. First off, with and I never know if I need to call it by its the name that he gave it, the one big beautiful bill, or the big ugly bill, or that piece of whatever. But we've got to roll that back, because the reductions in Medicaid, Medicare, we need to undo the caps on provider state taxes. Fortunately, our governor did a good job of getting in front of that, but down the road, that's going to be even worse for us. I think fundamentally, we've got to expand Medicare and Medicaid coverage. If we're not taking care of our kids and our grandparents, we're not taking care of us. I think there's also, fundamentally, I think there needs to be a separation of health insurance from your employer. It has never made sense to me why my boss, he doesn't choose which refrigerator I buy. He doesn't say you get to choose this or this or this one, because that's what I've picked for you. But that's how our insurance works, and it makes no sense to me. Because what that only encourages is your insurance company to work with your employer and not with you individually, the consumer. And that, to me, is anti-competitive. And I feel like if we do separate those two things, we'll get some better transparency and some competition. A really important thing that I think needs to happen, and this came from a conversation just yesterday while I was touring your health facilities here, is we need to increase grants to colleges and community college and do loan forgiveness. Oh, God dang it, I'm shut off again? I can finish this? Okay, good, sorry. It's like a court reporter here. Just so you know, sorry, I'm gonna stop, because then you're really gonna throw it at me. But we need to increase these grants to community colleges and whatnot, and do student loan forgiveness for healthcare professionals. Because if we can develop a program in Colby that actually feeds professionals into our communities in the rural side of the state, that actually stabilizes the people we need to do the service. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I was rewriting some questions here. All right, next, Kevin.
Well, so rural healthcare is infrastructure. It can't be viewed on the same ways that we view our urban hospitals and our suburban hospitals. It will need to be supported. The critical access hospitals like Decatur Health is a step in the right direction, reimbursing Medicare on a cost basis rather than how it's usually done is a step actually in the right direction. I will tell you that expanding Medicaid is helpful, but Medicaid pays a pittance versus Medicare. And so if you really want to improve health at the federal level, you reimburse Medicaid at the rate that Medicare reimburses, and that will make a critical difference in the health of our kids and our families. We need to expand broadband, because telemed works. I see telemed patients literally every week, almost every day, and it's a great service for families. It's a great service for families with kids in school. They run to the nurse's office, they hop on the internet, they don't miss class to come to the hospital. So expanding broadband to make sure we get telemedicine throughout the state. And the final thing, like Jason alluded to, I think I've got a partner who was in Salina for 6 years because he got his loans forgiven for practicing in an underserved area or rural area. And that works. That's how you attract folks there, and then they have families, or they meet their spouse and they decide to stay, or they just like that lifestyle. So getting people there is the first step. Sometimes they leave, sometimes they leave Kansas City. But getting them there and giving them an opportunity to stay if they enjoy it is huge. So federal subsidization of education for nurses and docs is a huge step in the right direction as well.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Eric, same question. What federal actions would you support to stabilize and reopen rural hospitals?
Sure, and I want to start with our campaign talks about two things: leading with solutions and putting people first. So I've got 4 very specific things that we're going to do to make sure that we support rural hospitals. But I want to first start by making sure, again, we understand the why. We have got to make sure that people all over this country understand why it is so important that we fund our rural hospitals. Rural hospitals are the lifeblood of our economy. They're our health, they're our economic engine. They are where we go on our best day and our worst day. And we have great healthcare workers all across this state who want to do this work. And the fact that only 2%, loved ones, of federal dollars go towards rural hospitals is unconscionable. So let's start there. We have to advocate to understand why this matters. As I was talking to Deb earlier, we also talked about what we're experiencing in rural communities around mental health, and what we see access and expanding access to the services so that we have this in our rural communities. Of the 340 rural hospitals at risk of closure all over this state, all over this country, 68 are here in Kansas. Again, we're getting a disproportionate burden of this, and we need to make sure that we are fair to our communities by going to get those dollars. So what do? We expand Medicare and we fix the Medicare reimbursement rates. We require that private insurance payments actually go up to cover the actual cost. Don't stick it to our hospital. We protect our Medicaid funding. We have to make sure that we give the rural emergency hospital designation. It's the lifeblood. Even if the inpatient service closes, and we've got to fight to keep that too, this rural emergency hospital designation is key. I want to also acknowledge Decatur Health, right? Decatur Health, award-winning. Do we know in 2025, Kansas Hospital Association said award-winning hospital. We can do this, loved ones. Make sure that our leaders prioritize investing in us, investing in rural Kansas at more than a piddly 2%. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Eric. Sandy?
All right, lots to do here. Rural hospitals, one thing we need to really look at, we need to look at the strategy behind this, right? We need to make a strategy to make rural hospitals economically viable. What we saw down in Colby, we were down there talking to some folks who are on the board down there. They went from a for-profit model to a not-for-profit model. Healthcare shouldn't be for profit. Healthcare should serve the people. And in doing that, they are now operating in the black. They have more doctors than they can hire, and we should replicate that model across other rural hospitals, award-winning or not. I think one of the things you see that right now at least 60% of rural hospitals in Kansas are operating at a loss. That will help fix that. Once you have a viable strategy to do this, then you put the plan in place and you start executing. It doesn't happen overnight. Of course, we have to reverse the awful things that were in the BBB. Expand Medicare, get the hospitals open, make sure that we restore those ACA premium tax credits to make sure that people can afford their healthcare premiums. Those premiums have shot through the roof for people. And we need to make sure that the 30+ hospitals that are right now on the chopping block in Kansas, more than any other state, have an opportunity to remain open. Because it's not just about healthcare. It's about the economic viability of these small towns. The good jobs are at the hospital, as we saw with the nurses, the doctors, the other folks that keep those hospitals operating. That is important. That will keep our small towns and cities running, and people actually have health care, and people want to be there as well and reside there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Ann?
Okay, so again, I agree with Damon. 100%, we gotta get the big money out. Y'all have heard me say that a lot, so I second that. But we also have to fix things as well. So when I first started all this, had no idea what I was doing, but I started going on roundtables because I thought, well, I want to know what people want to tell me. And I went to Pratt and heard about this issue, but then I met my friend Angela. Say hi, Angela. And I learned that she used to live in Osawatomie. And she had a heart attack. And she was rushed to the hospital in Paola. And she couldn't get the care that she needed there, so she had to be airlifted to Olathe. And that delay put her life on the line. And now I think, well, if you survive that, how are you going to pay for it? But this issue for Angela and for most of us is not political, it's personal. It's a matter of life and death. We all know that rural health care is under threat. We know that it relies heavily upon Medicare and Medicaid, and that the Trump cuts are going to be a disaster. So let's fix it. obviously short term, we gotta restore the Medicaid funding and stop the cuts that are pushing rural hospitals to the brink of closing or already closing. Medium term, we need real incentives to bring doctors and nurses to rural communities, like we can expand loan forgiveness for rural service. We can create more rural residency programs. We need higher reimbursement rates for practicing in underserved areas. And long term, in 2029, when we have our Oval Office back, or maybe, God willing, something else, we gotta make getting to universal health care work. And so I'm proposing Medicare for all kids. I think it's politically viable. I think it'll get us there. But one way or another, we gotta get there. Let's stop fighting about what we can't do and start figuring out what we can do. Let's start moving towards it.
Thank you, and Noah.
All right. The reality of the situation is 87% of our hospitals here in Kansas are operating in the red. And Roger Marshall voted to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid funding over the next 10 years. That Medicaid funding is a lifeline for rural hospitals. And I talked to a farmer yesterday in Colby. We were talking about healthcare, and he let me know that in Colby, it's 100 miles to the nearest OBGYN service. And Roger Marshall voted to make that problem worse. You know, Kansas has refused to expand Medicaid at the state level, so I'm a firm believer that the solution needs to come from the federal. If you live 2 hours away from the nearest emergency room and you have a life-threatening event, that's life or death, folks. I grew up in El Dorado, just outside of the country, far enough that when my mother's heart began to give out, I had to run to the nearest road to flag down the ambulance and bring it into her. That's in El Dorado, Kansas, where there's a hospital right in the city. The first thing we have to do for our rural hospitals is undo the damage that's been done by the One Big Beautiful Bill. And these Medicaid cuts need to be reversed. And while the Rural Health Transformation Grant is going to be a part of that, it's only offsetting 5% of Medicaid. So I'm focused on relief in 2027. And that's things like providing zero interest rate loans to hospitals to modernize and maintain their infrastructure, and increasing Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements rates specifically for rural hospitals, because Kansas deserves better.
Thank you, Noah. And Noah, hold the line, because we're going to switch it up and head the other direction, towards David there. So, and we also have 2 audience questions here, and I'm going to turn it over to my big, beautiful sister, Rory.
Hello. As the youngest person of my family, I do enjoy coming in and causing a tornadic activity here and switching things up. So many of you may have noticed on your way out here, if you took interstate, you might have noticed a few wind turbines there that really help us out here in generating energy. What are you going to do about anti-alternative energy policies by Trump that are affecting the progress of wind energy in western Kansas?
So I love wind turbines. I personally just love seeing them in the skyline, but Kansas is actually ranked 4th when it comes to that. And wind provides 41% of the electricity generated. It's a $1.6 billion profit for Kansas. And so farmers are actually receiving $267 million of that. It's a tax base. Wind is Kansas, and we need to be investing in that. And people like Roger Marshall, they champion rollbacks of these energy credits. And we have got to fix that, not only because it's wrong, not only because it attacks our energy, but it attacks our farmers. So we need to be investing in renewable energy. We need to reduce the cost. It helps the environment. It creates jobs. And in fact, just a quick aside, there's a little tiny town called Tampa, Kansas, 105 people. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Because of wind energy, because of the investment from corporations as they bring in these turbines, they got a new library, they got a new fire truck, 2 things they would have never gotten from their own tax base. But when we invest in a new renewable energy, when we invest in Kansas, we see dividends. Because again, Kansas deserves better.
This is a great question. One of my kids' favorite things when we travel is to see those big wind turbines. In fact, when I took my daughter on the trip with me, she had to take pictures for Max. Maxwell's my son, Veda's my daughter, because she promised he would, and he absolutely loves them. Noah's right. We have an incredible resource here for renewable energy. I don't know how many homes we could power with this wind energy, and if we can start moving it, transferring it, and I was told and it's been a minute since I talked about wind energy, so you'll have to forgive me. Like Damon, I'm not an expert on everything, but I can own it when I don't know it. But I remember that we were talking about how they had some way to transfer it out of the local areas across the country, right? Well, if we invest in energy at home, we're all going to benefit from it. We're not going to rely on, the oil when the Strait of Hormuz is shut down and Trump is lining his buddies' pockets in the stock market. But we'll give a lot of power back to the people. We'll bring in jobs, and I will fight for that.
Sandy?
Got mics everywhere. Couple different things here. First, we don't want to kill the birds. I'm kidding. Christ. Yeah. Again, I'm going to harken back. Let's create a strategy around this. There's no reason why not to. We'll do some fact-based decisioning. We saw some of the numbers that Noah kindly provided around revenue generation. That's important. We have to fund things. As we talk about getting money out of things, we can't just print money. We still have to fund things. So if we have revenue being generated by clean, renewable energy like wind, then let's harness that and let's say, what can we do with this? And then you look at the jobs it can generate, right? This is, again, more economics around it. You've got the tax revenue. You've got lower energy costs if we're actually making it here. But again, there's different types of energy. So the Strait of Hormuz is a little bit different kind of energy than what we need here from a wind perspective. But it also enables us to give farmers and those who have the wind energy on their land another revenue stream as well. So you've got a variety of tools here, levers going up and down that all point in a good direction. We just need to be able to make sure that we have the right strategy, the right plan, and then go and execute it against it. Eric?
Yes, I agree. Repeat the question, though. There's one thing I want to point out.
Absolutely. What are you going to do about anti-alternative energy policies by Trump that are affecting progress of wind investment in western Kansas?
Okay, so that part. What are you going to do about anti-alternative energy policies by Trump, or a number of policies by Trump that are hurting our communities? We have to remember this is a person who bankrupted casinos 6 times, right? So the reality is, and again, I appreciate Noah pointing out the statistics, wind energy is good for Kansans. Wind energy is good for our economy. It's good for our energy base. It's something that we need to be investing more in. This administration is so focused on chaos, this pendulum swing back and forth, from investing in clean energy, which we know in Kansas works, to now completely disregarding it and trying to only invest in oil. And we also know, though, our agricultural communities still need access to diesel. We still got to get some petroleum fuels out into the market. So we have to make sure that we do all of the above. Investing in wind is smart and good for Kansans. I'm a clean energy developer. We also invest in solar, and combining wind, solar, kind of all of the above into a strategy that makes sure that we can provide the most affordable energy in the places that we need it to really benefit and uplift Kansans, give us that revenue source, give us that additional opportunity in this economy. It's crazy to me that folks who that we're going to let somebody who bankrupted casinos also bankrupt our state and our country. So that's why I wanted to read the question again. We've got to understand it starts there with just bad policy at a federal level. Thank you.
Kevin, go ahead.
Well, I don't think we can make any changes to the Trump plan until we reverse the Congress. I mean, that's step one, is changing who's drafting the bills, who's drafting the legislation, who's controlling the House, who's controlling the Senate. Step two is to make sure that folks understand that clean energy actually increases our national security. There was a time, 3 years ago, where there was a gigantic investment in infrastructure for green energy that was gonna put thousands of people to work and create millions of jobs. That's since been reversed. So we can regain that energy with a simple change in the Congress and then eventually a change in administration. You've also got to invest, however, even more. You got to get the power lines to get the wind energy and the solar energy from here into the population center. So there's got to be some additional investment there as well. And then finally, I go back to the first thing I said, which when I'm talking about our policies, your budget is a reflection of where your interest, where your heart lies. If we're spending money on fossil fuels, and it's a clear statement that we don't care about the health of our kids and our families. And so I'll go back to, you gotta preach it, what's most important, what's the why? The why is to make sure that your kids and your grandkids have a safer, cleaner world.
Perfect, Jason?
When you're this far back in the line, basically all the answers, you go, yeah, what they said, this other thing, and yeah, that thing too. It's really true though, all the things that they said. And one of the things that's really important to me is, when we talk about wind turbines, and then we're also talking about solar, and it's not just the western part of the state. It's also the eastern and central part of the state need these things too. It is a Kansas thing. And whether it's wind or solar or geothermal, we need to be investing in those things because, like a colleague here just said, it's a national security issue. It also is, when we start diversifying our energy, that lowers the prices of other things. And I truly believe, sort of like what Kevin said here, is the reason why there's so much focus on, I'm going to take what you're going to say, but the reason why there's so much focus on avoiding these things is to line the pockets of the oil companies. I mean, that's the only reason why we've gone after Venezuela and Iran. Well, and name it. I mean, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna let you.
There we go, our last one.
What do Venezuela, Nigeria, and Iran all have in common? I am a passionate advocate for renewable energy. I have solar panels on my house, I drive electric cars, I love it, and I think it's the future. As a matter of fact, it dumbfounds me that Trump seems to want to take us back to the 1950s. And as a matter of fact, what we're doing is we're handing the future to China. But I think, and I have to resist the urge to blame oil and gas on this one, although I think they are definitely culprits. But on this one, I think it's Trump, in his unusual picadillos, he just does not like wind turbines. The problem is we don't have a Congress with spine. And I think this one in particular goes down to, we have to go back to earning the trust of Kansans so we can actually have honest conversations with them, which goes back to my earlier points of we need to come back, we need to talk to them, and we need to show that we're listening to them and that we're trustworthy. And I think the messaging will go along to, will follow along to where they accept it. But this one to me is a little bit more, I guess, nuanced. We have to earn the trust of the people we're talking to, and then I think these will be just as acceptable as the oil derricks we see in the fields right now.
Alrighty, thank you. Got another audience question here, and of course, Noah, we're going to come back to you. All right. Okay. This one we've touched on in earlier sessions about DOJ taking our information, as well as our own Secretary of State of Kansas basically handing over voter information to the federal government. What will you do about the harvesting of our personal information by this current administration?
As somebody who worked in counterintelligence, I understand a very simple concept. Information is power. And this administration has allowed people to take our information, and they're going to be using that to fixate on the algorithms of social media, to push back on us, and to influence the markets. So as previously talked about, one of the most important things that I learned as a kid as I was sneaking out of my house and my dad would catch me in the middle of the night is that trust is a beautiful wooden bridge. It takes a master craftsman forever to build, and the whole community loves it, but it takes one idiot with a match to light it on fire, and we got to restart from scratch. And I think that's where we're at when it comes to accountability with this administration, with people like Roger Marshall that just rubber stamp everything that comes through, is we have our information has been taken. We've seen from the investigations that DOJ employees put them on jump drives, and we have no idea where those jump drives are, no idea what has happened to them. So if we want to do this right, it means our Congress, our legislation, needs to get a backbone and actually hold these people accountable for what has been done, because we cannot rebuild that trust unless we have accountability.
Thank you. Anne?
Yeah, I don't know what we can do about our information having already been stolen. It is a huge concern for me. When Elon Musk was doing his thing, I was horrified because that's what I thought he was doing. I thought he was stealing our stuff. And my husband, being from India, we know a lot of engineers. And so he reached out to them and he was like, what's he doing? Talking about Elon Musk. He's like, oh yeah, he's just stealing everything. Everything he's doing is for Elon Musk. We should be worried. And we need people that are smarter than me to figure out what we're going to do. So I'll reach out to those people. I'll reach out to the experts and figure out how we can fix it. But I kind of think we're all just going to have to start with new Social Security numbers and everything else. To be honest with you, I think we're just going to have to start again because I don't know any other way to fix it. I also talked to one of those engineer friends, and they said we'll never figure out what he did in there. It would take years and countless hours and manpower to get in there and figure out exactly what he did. So, I don't know. If you got ideas, let me know though, because we do have to do something.
Sandy?
Thanks. I would start with congressional hearings after we, of course, retake Congress, both the Congress and the Senate. What we need to do, to everyone's point, is hold the people in charge accountable to this. What they did, and when you look at it, you had these 12-year-olds and they're stealing data, if you will, from both the IRS, the Social Security Administration, other places. We need to start finding out who did what, where it went, and then start fining those responsible every day until it gets back. Now, it doesn't mean there won't be replicated copies of that stuff out there. So we need to put some form of encryption and start being able to cover our data in a way that makes it so what they did is no longer effectual, and then we can move forward from that. To this point, we get some of the people in play that understand data. I understand data fairly well, but I'm by no means an expert. We need some of the folks that are experts in data to step forward and say, how do we mediate the risk that they incurred right then? But the first thing, like anything else, is transparent hearings to find out exactly what happened, who did what, who ordered you to do what, and it's not just Doge, it's not just Elon Musk doing it. You have to go higher, and we understand it's the president saying it, but it's most likely Stephen Miller with some ulterior motive behind it. And what nefarious options were they looking at doing with what? But there have to be ways to mediate the risk of what happened right now and take action around it.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I think it's real simple. The first thing we have to do is win, right? Because the folks that are in office right now are not going to hold this president and this administration accountable, right? Roger Marshall is not doing anything to hold this Trump administration to account. And so we know all of the horrible things they're doing to us, of which stealing our data is just one. But we first got to start by winning. But I don't just mean win here, right? We have to win this Senate seat. We have to help the CD1 candidates beat Tracy Mann, right? Colin and Lauren will go into the House and have hearings there and hold them accountable, right? We then need to elect folks like Chris Mann as our Attorney General so that the 50 states, if we had states attorneys generals coming together saying, what did you do with my Kansas residents' data? So these are the things we have to do, loved ones. We have got to vote. We have got to win. We've got to make sure that our friends and neighbors understand, and we have to meet them where they are, right? The reality is, folks were lied to, right? This president promised to unrig the system, and instead just re-rigged it for Don Jr. and billionaires and his cronies. And so we have to understand that. We got to win. We got to then go hold them accountable, fight back at every single level of government. So that's why it's important that we not just talk about beating Roger Marshall in the Senate. We're going to do that. We've got to make sure that up and down the ballot and all over this country, we put people in these seats that are going to act with integrity. And then once we get there, then we can talk about how do we solve the data breaches, who's going to leave here in handcuffs, those kinds of conversations, right? So appreciate the question.
Kevin, go ahead.
Eric's right again. So that nothing's going to change until Congress changes. There's no reason to think there'll be accountability if things stay the way they are now. So that's step one. I would also argue it's not just the government that's stolen our data, it's also Meta and it's Google and it's any other sort of conglomeration that's been harvesting our data for a long time and making money off of it, actually. I think the other thing I would add to this is it's done. I mean, the data's out there. It's done. I think we have a responsibility to make our kids appreciate just how vulnerable they are. My 16, 18, 20-year-olds have no problem putting anything out there with some wonderful TikTok videos. But just the education, the awareness that once it's out there forever. And so it's done, but I think going forward, we can educate ourselves and our kids that they can make themselves less vulnerable.
Perfect. Jason?
So like Eric said, one of the things we got to figure out is how to put these folks in handcuffs. That's actually why I'm running, and that was going to be part of my closing, is talking to you about, as a criminal prosecutor, that's what I have been doing for 21 years, is building the case that sends somebody to prison. And that's why I want to go to the U.S. Senate, because it's kind of like being back at Watergate time. We found out there was a thing that happened, and it was the Senate, with the trial attorney as the chair, who ran those investigations on PBS, which they've unfortunately sort of tried to get rid of, but they did that, and some folks went to jail. Now, we have a lot more chaos and corruption, and so there's going to need to be a lot more, but that's one of the places we start. That's a place we start with prosecuting for accountability. But the other thing that we do, and it's like what Kevin said, is we need to be looking at big tech. Because one of the things that they've done is they've created a system that Congress kept their hands off for 20 years. And we've just now been seeing how the New Mexico Attorney General and folks in California have actually been now litigating and shown that they've been tricking us. And what needs to happen is we need to have some legislation written that if big tech is going to root around in our information and our data to figure out how to extract more money from us, they need to be doing other things for the public good, such as checking for child exploitation material. And I can bet you, I know exactly what will happen. They will go, well, Jesus, we don't want to do that, so we're not going to go root around in your stuff. Or they will want to do that. Or they'll say they don't want to do that and then still do it, and then we'll have to go put some handcuffs on folks. But that's how you solve these problems, is you address what ultimately, did you just give me the hand signal? I'm sorry, God dang it.
I'll have the closing statement, I promise. David, go ahead.
We have to rebuild trust. I was thinking about it, and I concur with all the answers. I would love to see Jason prosecute. Man, would I love to see it, because I can tell he has a passion. The problem is we live in a world where someone could literally walk up to a MAGA, President Trump could walk up to a MAGA person and stick his hand in his pocket and steal his billfold, and Trump could point to me and say he did it, and the guy's gonna think I did it. We live in that world, and I don't know if people realize exactly how, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say anything because I care about all Kansas and I want to include them all, but we have people who are just fooled right now, and we have to earn their trust. Before we earn their trust, we can't discuss these serious subjects with them. Of course, we want to hold people accountable, but right now the tech industry just increased its lobbying dollars for 2025 to over $120 million a year. What does that $125 million buy them? It buys them protection. And so that's what I want to address. Then we can address this subject with more vigor.
All right, thank you. And we'll go ahead and move forward with closing statements. So Damon, go ahead. Putting you on the
First
spot.
off, I'm ending. Lori, I want to thank you. This was super nice. What she's done in a short period of time is amazing. I also want to thank everybody here, and thank you all for coming. This is my first time being in front of a group for a few years, so I appreciate that. I'm running on a single platform, and that platform is to get rid of the legal corruption within the system. I really believe this is a platform that can unite Kansans, and I'm so sick and tired of money in the system. I'm not taking donations. I'm doing it through word of mouth. It's a grassroots campaign, and I'll show you how hokey it is. And I don't mind hokey. As a matter of fact, it might suit me just well. Is I've been handing out these stickers to anyone I talk to and asking them to put it in the back of their trucks or cars. And I want to start to create a movement of people. I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat or Independent. What I want people to see is that this issue matters. I have talked to plenty of people on both sides of the aisle, and they seem to care about this above all others, and I think it's a chance to unite us, because I care about community. Community is a big deal to me. We can't solve water sustainability issues. We can't hardly solve anything unless we can see other people as a part of our community. And I think it has to start right now with finding common cause, and that's why I'm running. And so andersonforkansas.com is the website. I'd certainly appreciate anybody who's interested to reach out to me. I'll get you a sticker, put it in your car, and let's create that movement together. Thank you.
Jason, continue with your closing statement.
I feel judged. I object. Sustained.
So excited to hear
Oh,
you.
no, you're fine. No, you're completely fine. No, here's the thing. I agree with the sentiment that there's probably some folks out there that it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're gonna believe whatever. But there is a group of folks that are disaffected and they're disillusioned and they're Republicans. And one thing I know as I look at the numbers is we can't do this just as Democrats. And we can't do this just as Democrats and independents. We need to figure out how to bring folks over, bring some Republicans over. And one of the things that I thought about when I decided to quit my other job and go take my public service in a different direction was, well, what do I present as a Democratic candidate that a Republican would vote for? And one of the things I thought about is, well, what were all the reasons why they didn't vote for Kamala Harris? And they'll tell you, well, it was her laugh, or it was this, or the way she, and I'm like, no, we know what it was. And I'm sitting here going, these are dumb disqualifiers, but they are the reality that we exist in. And I hate it, but I also acknowledge it. And I'm like, it's sort of like David Tolan said, do we want to win or do we want to look good losing? And I'm like, we got to get rid of all the dumb disqualifiers and give these Republican voters what I would call a binary choice, because they always like a binary, all right? So what I propose is we're gonna make them choose or refuse the prosecutor pedophiles. That's me. You make them choose or refuse the prosecutor pedophiles, and you hit them right in the morals. It's either I'm gonna choose Jason Hart, the guy who gets out there and prosecutes the Epstein class, or I'm gonna choose the other guy. Now that's a strategy for the general, right? I'm maybe not your favorite candidate in the primary, but this is about winning. And I want to go there and I want to prosecute and reboot. And I think that we have to do that because, did you just cut me off? My God.
Finish.
Hey, no. Find me later. If you like what you heard, spread the word, but come find me later.
My plan was to give Jason a couple more minutes. So, sorry about that. I didn't prepare, I didn't read the instructions well. I didn't prepare any closing remarks, candidly. This started with me emailing Lori, texting on a Saturday morning 2 weeks ago, and the response was, well, we're having a meeting in 2 weeks, come on out. And so, super grateful for that. All the folks up here bring unique skills and would all be candidly awesome folks to have in DC. My skills as a surgeon, as a pediatric surgeon, is I'm tireless and I'm very comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I hope and pray that I've shown myself to be thoughtful and earnest in my answers. I frankly promise to focus on solutions. I'm not going to gripe. I'm not going to complain. Frankly, you're not going to hear me refer to another candidate in our party or another one. That's just, as far as I'm concerned, wasted effort. I'm not going to cede religion and patriotism to the other party. I've got a flag flying in front of my house. My dad was a bomber pilot in World War II. So grateful for your time. Y'all have taken, it's late. My wife's already texted me that I should be on the road. So thank y'all very much for your attention.
Go ahead, Eric.
Sure. I want to thank all of you for being here today. These are important conversations that we're having, and you are starting to see some distinction. You're going to have your work cut out for you because you do have a lot of candidates in this race. I think that it's a reflection of how many people know that we can beat Roger Marshall, right? So let's take that right there, yeah? So because Roger is so beatable, we all want an opportunity to beat him. But we've got great candidates here. We've got doctors, we've got lawyers, we've got business people, soldiers and veterans. I want you to leave here knowing a couple of things. I'm a problem solver and I'm a builder, right? And right now, the administration is causing problems, right? We need to be leading with solutions. I don't think, and I don't want to pick on Jason, but I don't think that this is the moment that we're going to go and try to model ourselves more like them. This is the moment where they're realizing through our values and through our moral clarity that they have an opportunity to come to us, right? And I think when we are building and uniting people all over this state, I've been to about 40 out of the 105 counties so far. We are going to be in all 105 counties. We are engaging young people and old people. We are engaging rural and urban voters. And we get to talk to every constituency about what unites us, right? We care about healthcare, education, agriculture, aerospace, automotive, rural transformation. That's hard, right? So when we're on our Heart of America tour, going around talking to everybody about that with a focus on solutions, and most importantly, a focus on putting people first, that, loved ones, is the energy that we're taking to the U.S. Senate, and that's the energy that we're getting back. Why, I have not met a single person, and this is crazy to me, because my wife was worried about me when I went out campaigning. She said, oh my God, you're going to get this, that, and the other. Look at how, sadly, how hateful the politics and things have become. Everybody's been nice to me. 100% of the people that I've met have been excited to see me. I've had tears, I've had hugs. We can do this together. Let's not sacrifice our values to be more like those in Washington. Let's take our Kansas values, our democratic values, our love, and our solutions there. Thank you all for having me.
All right. I don't think the bobblehead has closing remarks. He's already left.
He doesn't really speak.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No.
He would stay long.
Thank you all, and Lori, thanks again. I mean, just a rock star moment. Everyone here, really appreciate y'all coming out because we do need to have these conversations. I am loving the group of people up here in a very great way. They're bringing out the best in each other. I'm going to take a little exception with Jason. I don't think we need a binary choice between two old white guys. Just saying. Just saying. Okay, yeah, not as old as him, but you're still up there, babe. Okay, seriously, I'm just saying, we need to look at things around core values, right? We need to look at people who actually respect the Constitution, respect each other. Now, Bobble Raj is a treatment to indicate how ineffectual Roger Marshall is. All he does is stand behind Trump and nod his head, right? It is not calling Roger a bobblehead. Just being there. Acting with integrity and holding people accountable. You guys have the hardest choice. You need to take a step back and say, there's some folks up here that have skill sets. Who has the best skill sets? Who has the best skill sets to really represent me and what I'm doing? Who has the best skill sets to fight for Kansans? Who can walk in the room with 100 senior people, if you will, the Senate is a senior level position, and be accepted as one of their peers that can fight with them and bring value to the table and be accepted for that. To Eric's point, I agree, we really need, it's not about us individually at all. It's about us collectively. Together we can do anything, but we do need the other candidates. We need the CD1. As much as that sounds hard, we need to be able to do that. We need to turn the Senate. This is an opportunity of a lifetime to really come in and make a difference. We need Chris Mann and Jennifer Day to that data perspective. They're trying to get voter polls too. And we need the governorship, for crying out loud. Without our governor, they would have our roles off of the election cycle now. I'm going to end really quickly here. A shout out to Noah. I do believe Kansas deserves better. I've been saying it for about a year. We are one Kansas. If we work together on this, red, blue, I root for the red, root for blue, but most of all, I root for Kansas. SandyForKansas.com. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sandy. Ann, go ahead.
Okay, so told you a little bit about who I was. Now I want to tell you who we are. We are a grandma and her husband who has a mixed race family and who is on disability and who has a daughter who's LGBT and who is worried about her family. We are my scheduler who had lost all hope of a future in this country, whom I met on April 5th at one of the rallies, who found hope in our movement. He's married to a man and he is terrified for his husband. We are a young man who's very brilliant, who plans on leaving the country because he sees no future for himself. We are an older activist who has been fighting for our country for a long time and sees this as a way to fight fascism. We are my friend who asked me to run, who is a naturalized citizen from an Asian country with 2 children who are also mixed, and her husband who works on the railroads. We are a motorcycle rider who had also lost hope until she saw me speak on April 5th, and we've been friends since. We are a woman who has been fighting for justice in the incarceration system, who felt a lot of this a long time before we did, because her Ukrainian family members were held in an ICE detention facility, and eventually, after I believe it was about 15 months, sent back to the Ukraine. We are my husband, who has picked up a lot of slack for us. She's cut me off, but oh, that's the, all right. So my husband, who's been picking up the slack at home, my mother-in-law who has cancer, my father-in-law who is 86 years old, who helped me with my children. We're my children, who I never left for more than one night, and maybe 3 times before I started this. But I knew I had to do it, because what am I going to leave them if I don't? We are a guy in California who's friends with my husband, who saw what we were doing and wrote us a campaign song, and his friend that also was inspired by us. We're over 71 volunteers, and we want everybody with us. Join us on Thursdays at 6 via Zoom for our big team call. Meet the team. Sign up to work with us. We want a campaign in all 105 counties. And then if you choose me to go work for you, I want to maintain that so you have easy access to me throughout my term. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. No.
You know, I've been traveling around talking to Kansas, left, right, center, and one thing that I've come to realize and really hear is that Kansans feel like a small group of people at the top have all the say, and our voices no longer matter. And it's because our elected officials have left regular folks, regular Kansans, behind. They cash their checks, they cast their votes, and they watch their stock portfolios climb. You know, it used to be that being in politics was a job, not a pathway to wealth. And I'm running for Senate because I believe that it's time to land a few black eyes on a system that works great for people at the top like Roger Marshall, but not so much for the rest of us. You know, they can run out the back door when things get rough, but we can't. We're in the grocery store paying more. We're at the gas pump paying more. We're seeing these tariffs take thousands of dollars away from our pockets. You know, Kansas, they're not looking for a white horse, someone on a white horse to come riding in and save the day. Kansas wants somebody to stand tall, dig in, and fight for them. And I know what that fight looks like. I fought for this country, and I'll fight for this state with every ounce of my being. I'm not taking corporate PAC money. I'm not taking special interest money. The only people I want to represent, fight for, and answer to are the people of Kansas, because they deserve better. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for hearing all of us. And if I could have one favor from you folks, we're about to leave this room and go out into the rest of our lives, so there's more things going on, but if you could just tell 1 to 3 people about what you heard today from all of us, that's how we win, by not being silent. Thank you.
Vote no.
Yeah, vote no.
All righty. Let's give a hand to our candidates. The people who did Roger Marshall's job. I want to thank all of our sponsors and constituents who came out, as well as the candidates. Thank you for coming across the state here to talk with us. We really do appreciate it. We feel cared for. Lori, any last words or anything like that?
Thank you to everybody for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for everybody for putting this on. If you wish to talk to the candidates, I'm sure they're going to head back to their tables and start packing things up. But you can go listen to Jason's final closing remarks there. He'll finish it for you. Thank you all.